When it rains, it pours. Hello, my friend, Perez Hilton here, the queen of all media, the original influencer, and a few updates on the Menendez brothers. I know that a lot of you are rooting for their release. The two of them were convicted way back in the 90s in the murder of their parents. That means they've served over 30 years behind bars. And it should be noted that they allege that the father was not just physically abusive, but socially. S to the E to the X, U-L-E. You know what I mean. Something that no parent should ever do to a child. The brothers are pursuing multiple courses of action that could see them freed from prison. And as I previously shared with you, the prior Los Angeles County District Attorney, Jorge Gascon, advocated for them being released. Unfortunately, he lost re-election and a new DA was put into power. A court hearing is coming up very shortly, but while the previous DA recommended that the brothers be released immediately, the new DA says, nope. Nathan Hochman, who assumed office in December and is now fully caught up on all of their trials. Yes, there was more than one trial way back in the day. He has recommended that a judge reject the brothers' request for a new trial. The DA claims that the new evidence doesn't help them at all. Explaining this stance, which opposes their habeas corpus petition, the DA accused the siblings of a continuum of lies and argued that they should have known about the letter supposedly written in 1988, where one of their cousins talked in this letter about the abuse that was happening in the house. That kind of abuse. Hochman, the new DA, says if this letter truly existed, the defense counsel would have absolutely used it at the trial because it would have helped corroborate Erik Menendez's testimony. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because some of you have been following this way closer than I have. Wasn't the letter discovered after the trials? So if that is true, if this letter was discovered after their trials in the 90s, wouldn't it make sense then to now consider this piece of evidence? But the new DA thinks they're lying. Interestingly, though, the DA has declined to announce his decision on the separate resentencing request. He did say that he would make up his mind ahead of a 2-day hearing starting on March the 20th. And just because he's against the habeas corpus petition, it doesn't necessarily mean the same will be true for the resentencing. Because given current guidelines in California and the age that the two of them were when they committed the crimes, they would be eligible for release now. They've served more than 30 years behind bars. The DA is aware that resentencing relies on more factors than just evidence and facts of the case, such as their rehabilitation efforts. So they still have a chance. Especially because Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has said that he will delay his decision on the clemency request until the DA has fully reviewed the case. So even if the DA says that they should not be released, resentencing should be, continuing life behind bars, and even if the judge agrees, the governor of California can overrule them both. Clemency. In fact, just today, the governor, Newsom, announced a risk assessment order ahead of the resentencing hearing. Newsom had said a few months ago, back in November, that he would defer to the newly elected Los Angeles County DA before making any decisions. Now it looks like He will consider what the DA thinks, but ultimately the decision will be Gavin Newsom's. Newsom has directed the state's parole board to investigate whether Erik and Lyle pose an unreasonable public safety risk if released from prison. The governor says that public safety experts and forensic psychologists will conduct a risk assessment investigation for the parole board to determine whether the brothers pose a public safety threat if released. The findings of that investigation will then be handed over to the Los Angeles County District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, Newsom said, and to the Los Angeles County Superior Court judge presiding over their resentencing effort, which is ongoing. There's no guarantee of outcome here, Newsom said today, but, quote, my office conducts dozens and dozens of these clemency reviews on a consistent basis. But this process simply provides more transparency, which I think is important in this case, and more due diligence before I make any determination for clemency. Lawyers for the Menendez brothers said today that they are grateful for the governor's comments. Quote, the family realizes that the governor's action does not mean he will commute the sentences. Instead, this initial step reflects the governor's considered decision to at least obtain the information required to make a fair decision as to whether Erik and Lyle, after 35 years in prison, have done the hard work necessary to have a chance at life outside prison. Remember, the two of them initially lied to the authorities about the schmurders. And yes, the self-defense after years of abuse was argued, okay? But it's the evidence that was not previously considered, this bombshell letter. Prosecutors in Los Angeles have long disputed the self-defense argument, instead countering that it was purely financially motivated. Their dad was very, very wealthy. He worked in the music industry, and only in the last couple of years has another alleged victim come forward saying that something similar happened to him. A former member of the boy band Menudo, and yes, he was a young man, a young person, a teenager. As for the district attorney, the family has some not so nice things to say about him. In a statement, the brothers' relatives say, District Attorney Nathan Hochman took us right back to 1996. He opened the wounds we have spent decades trying to heal. He didn't listen to us. For over 3 decades, our family has lived with the weight of what Erik and Lyle endured, abuse that shaped their lives, fear that defined their childhood, and a justice system that refused to see them as victims. We have fought and advocated tirelessly for their release so that we can finally heal and move forward. All we are asking for is to right this decades-long injustice. And the brothers have done a lot behind bars to help others. They built a green space in prison modeled on a Norwegian concept. They have pursued education behind bars. They have been on their best behavior over the last 30 years while incarcerated. And the two of them have even led prison groups for inmates who suffer from untreated trauma and physical disabilities. I think that's a beautiful story of not just rehabilitation, but redemption and helping others. I think that they should be released. What do you think? Let's discuss in the comment section.